Hey guys, work injury attorney Scott DeSalvo here with another exciting tip for you if you've been involved in an accident or injury. Super important information for you to have. The question is, if I work overtime at work all the time, does that get included in the 2/3 of the money they pay me while I'm off work with a doctor's note, right? So you probably remember from one of the older videos that if you're off work with a doctor's note, they got to pay you, right? It's not as simple as that. It's got to be off work with a doctor's note with a restriction, and then the company doesn't accommodate you, right? So the company actually has a right to offer you work within the restriction, but we'll talk about that in a different video. This topic, of course, is if you work overtime, is that included in the 2/3 of pay that you get while you're off work in a workers' comp case? And like so many of these, it depends, but this one's pretty simple. So here's the way it works. If the overtime is mandatory, then yes, we add all that overtime in and take 2/3 of that money, and that's the money you're entitled to every week while you're off work with a doctor's note, right? If the overtime is not mandatory, if it's purely voluntary, they never force you to work it. I've worked at places where there was like the senior guys get to accept it or reject it, but then if they don't want it, they never want it, and then the junior guys got to work it. We got a good argument for that being mandatory overtime. So for sure, if it's like in a contract or in a rule book, or it's processed that anytime the company asks you to work overtime you have to, then it's absolutely going to be included in your TTD, temporary total disability rate, which is just fancy lawyer speak for the money you get paid while you're off work with a doctor's note. But if it's, a lot of these places, it becomes a little bit iffy, right? So they're going to claim it's not mandatory. Why? Because it saves them money. But if it actually is mandatory, and we have some evidence, even people just at the company who say this is how it works, then we got a pretty good option of including it, right? The other thing to think about is, like, if you work overtime like 1 day a year or like 3 days a year, the difference between that overtime and the other stuff is it's not going to be a big number. But I've worked at a place where there was mandatory overtime over the holidays. So if it's mandatory, it's included. So hope that helps you. Have a great day. Thanks for watching, and if I can help you, reach out, okay? Thank you.